Hi, guys, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. We help Muslims and non Muslims to handle Islam in the 21st century. My name is Mustafa, and this is my co host in the nick of time. If you wish to talk about Islam, the ideology, you have come to the right place. We cover current Islamic news, Islamic scripture, some crazy comments, and a weekly topic about Islam to examine, critique, and analyze. If this is not enough Islam for you, please drop by our Discord to discuss any further questions about Islam. We condemn any form of discrimination, violence, misogyny, slavery. However, we do embrace free speech and criticism if it's factual and correct. Thank you for stopping by and enjoy the Gin and Tonic Show.
I was muted. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect.
I can hear you.
Perfect. How are you doing today, Nikhil?
I'm doing. I was doing well till now. Then I saw your face, and now I'm sad.
Oh no! Is it the hair that's bothering you, just like it did to Drastic?
Oh no! I'm a racist, right? I'm a white guy.
So you don't like a brown critic. I'm Culture Ginny, very well-mannered Culture Ginny, who comes in people's dreams, telling them that life is not like history is not black and white. It's complicated.
Exactly. I'm the gray cloud, making everything complicated.
You are the literal devil's advocate that will come into your nightmares and your good dreams and say, no. It's not as simple as that.
Well, that's an interesting nickname for Culture Ginny, considering that the only one here with an actual legal degree is you, Moose.
I know, right? And keeping in mind, even despite me being a legal professional, there are cases of like absolute liability too, where it's like, yeah, it's pretty black and white. And this is normally the case with traffic offenses. There's no way around that one.
Yes, of course. It wouldn't be great if there did not exist black and white too, because that would be a black and white statement.
I know, but it's like, oh man, with traffic, they're like, no gray areas. You pay the fine, or you fry. That's
when you said traffic incidents, I was like, oh, police brutality with black and white, but
no, not that kind of black and white. I'm talking about actual traffic, like when you're driving on the road. That you cannot screw up. You cannot screw that up, or you're doomed, pretty much. That's the only black and white system in at least the Canadian legal system. I'm not sure about the UK or Sweden or the US or India or Pakistan. Pakistan one, that was pretty debatable too. I think Pakistan's absolute liability lies in the Hudud ordinance or the Islamic rules. That's where their absolute liability lies. So, but then again, I could be wrong. I could be very wrong if someone who studied the legal system in Pakistan can tell me otherwise. So yes, that is what you call it, being a legal professional. UK is black and white. Okay, yes. So UK is pretty black and white when it comes to traffic. All right.
I got a question as well. Just speaking of black and white.
This is not you guys jumping on me and asking me for legal advice.
Please ask your own legal professionals for help.
Yes,
don't trust us.
Exactly. Don't ask Moose or
don't
me.
Ask me. I am only familiar with the Canadian system and only specifically Ontario, the province of Ontario. I am not good with the province of Quebec or Alberta, for that matter.
Yeah. Well, you could probably ask me for help on New York law because I watch enough Suits to learn about it.
That doesn't make you an expert on New York law. Oh, man. That doesn't make you an expert on New York law. So, got a 60-pound fine for being in the Boston, literally. Yep. Yep, that's gonna do it. Sorry, Dudabites. They're gonna be very big jerks about this one, and they're not gonna let that. You can kind of try to reduce said fine. At least if it were Canada. I'm not sure about the UK though, but I know in Canada you can kind of try to reduce it, but you still have the liability, and it's going to affect your license demerit points too, because and the demerit points in turn affect your insurance as well, your motor vehicle insurance.
Oh, this is all a scam run by the insurance companies. I'm pretty sure.
Absolutely, this is a scam. I just work in this legal scam, so that's the. But thankfully, I don't work in traffic law. I work in refugee law, so that's not my expertise.
Good, because with how many traffic tickets I get, if you worked in traffic law, you'd be fucked. All right. Just a quick.
It is a generated, automatically generated count on from the cameras as well too. And there is an ombudsman, yes. So that Dudabites is correct. There is definitely an ombudsman. But yeah, you guys have probably realized, if there are new viewers to this show, they've probably realized how chill this show really is about, certain topics. We're not dangerous Islamophobes that are out to attack Islam. We're normal human beings with regular problems.
Yeah. Before we go further as well, just on that chillness, I was watching I don't talk about Islam on the regular on my... I actually avoid Islam on the regular on my
on your free time podcast.
Yeah, on my regular podcast, or just my free time in general.
Yeah,
I'm an engineer by trade. I generally love watching the Lex Friedman podcast, and he does like these lectures on AI and automated driving at MIT. So I love watching those. But recently, he actually interviewed Omar Suleiman.
Oh, really?
About Islam.
Really?
So next week, if the audience or Moose, if you're down, I'd love to react to one of the videos where Lex basically asks him, very vague questions, but allows Omar to speak about the topic regarding whether is the Quran the word of God. Right. And basically, Lex, I think, does a really good job of interviewing where he's not debating, but he's interviewing, where he asks a vague question like, can you explain the difference between the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran? And then lets Omar speak for like 3 to 4 minutes uninterrupted, just giving that explanation and such. So if the audience would like, and then if you're also interested in that, I would love to react to that video next week.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'd be definitely interested to react to something like that. Definitely. Probably either next week or the following. However, I would love to react to that. I know we've also been, kind of behind on like any news items, but if there are any news items you guys want us to talk about or any stories specifically in the future, do let us know. Especially happenings in the Middle East or the Islamic world in general. So I think further ado, you were saying?
Yeah, no, I just think Islam's like a former teen star turned adult, where they're always on the news for some mischievous things.
Yeah, it's definitely like, what do you call it? And Nathan Kawande, you are kind of correct on this, that the Quran confirms the veracity of the previous and the Bible is corrupted. It's a weird like, dichotomy, because it's a corrupted claim, but then you're going to use the previous source to confirm your source. It's a very big contradiction in itself too. And not only that, there are some contradictions with the Quranic stories, with the biblical stories themselves too, which we should also discuss in a future episode as well. Like, what are the contradictions? Which stories from not the biblical canon and from the biblical canon that the Quran, actually took, because because the Bible isn't just one solid book; it's multiple books, and it depends on which, what do you call it? What's the term, Jenny? What's the term? Probably is sect, or is it what do you call it? Because I know Roman Catholic has a different canon, the Ethiopic Church has a different canon, and
I think it is sect.
Yeah. So I'm guessing Protestant church has a different
denomination.
Yes, that's the correct term, denomination. Yes. That just escaped my head for some reason. So
but most Protestant churches have variants of the Roman canon, since they are, developed from the Roman Catholic tradition. It's just that they, departed from it, but they still have the same type of Bible in the same type of core texts. Do they have translations of it and various such versions, but they don't have radically different texts, like, for example, the Roman Catholic Church and the Ethiopic
and in North America, the King James version is very, very popular because of the King James version is like seen as like the end all be all for some reason.
I mean, the King James version is just a English standardized translation of the, Biblia Vulgata, of the, Common Bible of the Roman tradition.
Dude, Abais, we did a video on, I think, the Alexander.
I did an entire research paper on that, and then I think we presented it together on the show.
The Alexander the Great, Alexander Romance myths did influence the Quranic story in chapter 18, 83 to 101. The Syriac version specifically, and we even reacted to the masked Arabs research itself too.
Yeah,
because we couldn't do any justice. And then I think there's other videos as well by Kings and Generals did a video. And
the research I got was from the Kings and Generals video. I think that channel does very good work.
And Urdu's Free Speaker as well. Urdu Free Speaker also did, or Free Thinker. I think he's called Urdu Free Thinker. He did a video on Urdu, maybe on English. But definitely he did something on like Zulkarnain being influenced by Alexander. We did a video, but we might revisit that again too. Wouldn't you know it? But in some way, in a different way. We'll try to do something different.
I wanted to ask, you can join the stream. I put in the StreamYard link.
Yeah,
you can click
it. We're going to finish off with we're going to start with the Rashidun Caliphate, basically. We know we were going to finish with the Roman, the conflicts with the Christian world, as well as the Muslim world. So let me just, actually just finish that one off.
Give it a quick candy and finish it off.
We'll just give it a quick quick. So we just finished at the French campaign, where the Muslims stopped. And this was the Battle of Tours, was the famous battle in 732 where the Umayyad campaign was stopped. But then suddenly, one of the caliphs, I believe it was Suleiman, who called all the generals back and had them executed or something like that. But then there was a civil war with the Abbasids too. And Ginny and I were just speaking about the Abbasids actually murdering the leaders of the Umayyad clans by calling them to dinner. So... and also, by the way, if you want to join the live stream, click on the link right here. Click on the link. So yeah, definitely you can join the live stream whenever convenient. And then also we have the Umayyads ousted by the Abbasids. However, Abdul Rahman is the one who escaped, and he was able to go to Spain and establish an emirate over there in Spain. And he established a separate caliphate compared to the Abbasids. And I think this is where we have people like Harun al-Rashid, but then they also have their conflicts with the imams too, the Shia imams as well, like Raza, like Musa al-Qasim. So the Abbasids are also seen as villainous too by Shia Muslims. But then people allege that the Abbasid reign was also the start of the Golden Age. I personally don't like this term, Golden Age, because politics, especially, as well as like scientific progress, as well as literature, it was very complicated because part in part, there was some propaganda as well, like with the Sirah of Ibn Ishaq, for example. Mansur, the caliph, had Ibn Ishaq advised. I actually read this in York University's research, that he had Ibn Ishaq make Mansur the descendant of Ibn Abbas, which was Muhammad's uncle, or Muhammad's uncle Abbas, actually, Abbas. And so being that, he basically portrayed himself as, oh, we are also descendants of the Muhammad's family, so we are the rightful heirs. And interestingly enough, he united the East, which is the Iranian, the Persian world, under his favor, whereas in that way they were able to oust the Umayyads in the war. However, it turned out that this was a deception. Though some claim that
Oh, and Moose, if you can zoom in a bit, it's a bit.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So yeah. I'm sorry, I'm just in this general area. Like, I'm not talking specifically, but yeah, I'm talking more specifically Abbasid era. It was very complicated, and also it was sort of also in its own way, it started a downfall too, because the maximum territory that they gained was during the Umayyad period. So the main Islamic Caliphate was in a weird downfall, though they did take territories as well. But there was this constant back and forth. Like in the 10th century, for example, in Syria and Arabia, the Egyptian Fatimids also took a rise in the 10th century CE. And the Fatimids established their own caliphate when they took over Syria, Mecca, and Medina, and their main stronghold was Egypt. And Fatimids were Ismaili, the first Ismaili caliphate, practically. And then we have Baghdad taken over by the Seljuk Turks. And keep in mind, the Abbasids are still there, but they're in a weird downfall because the Seljuk Turks take over Anatolia. And
the Buyids had already taken them over, so they were already the subjects of another entity that the Seljuks conquered.
Yeah. And if anything, like the Abbasids are losing territory in this era. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a golden period because there's also a lot of bloodshed too.
There is too, but I mean, there is a lot of social and economical advancement as well.
Yes. So it's best to describe it. It's not as easy to describe that time frame.
It's kind of like the Renaissance.
Yes.
In Europe.
Yeah.
A period of great upheaval and great changes together with great, social inventions and social change.
Yeah, social change, but also like very turmoil.
With the Reformation and everything connected to that, in combination with the great economical development and social change.
Yeah, and then we come to the First Crusade. Again, we're only brushing over the major events because Pope Urban II declared the First Crusade on November 27, 1095 from France and to the Holy Land. So the First Crusade was the siege of Antioch. Jerusalem was captured in Antioch. It was 1098. Jerusalem captured in 1099, and the Latin kingdoms established on the Syrian coast, counties of Edessa and Tripoli. Then there was the crushing defeat of the crusading armies by the Turks in 1101. Then the Knights Hospitaller were founded in 1113. And then we had more developments in Spain, where the Crusades happened to regain it from Spain. However, the council, there was some like territories gained, some lost, but it was a very bit of a tussle.
Yeah, Musa, I just wanted to ask, did you address the Dudabites? What social change, for example?
In this is in regards to the Islamic, period, or the Renaissance specifically, because that would depend too. Because in the Islamic period, the social changes, it's a bit hard to say because someone like, let's just say, Razi was actually able to criticize Muhammad and the Quran very, very openly and was still respected as a doctor. So,
I mean, you have several changes that happen with during the Abbasid Caliphate versus the Umayyads. You have greater, you see greater equality between pure-blooded Arabs and Arabs that, are people that have just begun speaking Arabic. Because before, you actually had you couldn't be a part of, for example, the administration.
Yeah,
or part of any of the systems if you weren't a pure-blooded Arab with 5 generations back that you could prove were pure Arabs. This is actually more than what Nazi Germany demanded from Germans being pure-blooded. That went 3 generations back. This was 5.
Yeah. And keep in mind, this wasn't necessarily even started by the Umayyads. This was actually started in the Rashidun Caliphate too. So this was
and arguably even before that, because the Rassasina
kingdoms, right?
the Rassasina, the Rassanids, they they also practiced something very similar, which is that people have discussed if they actually adopted it from the Rassanids.
I was covering the Umar Caliphate, and I forgot to mention, there was the Pact of Umar. But I'll definitely cover the Pact of Umar in the Umar's Caliphate, but we'll briefly cover it. Again, I know it's just a lot of things to cover. Then we have Council of Troy's foundation of Knights Templar in 1128. Then we have the Second Crusade led by Louis VII of France and the Holy Roman Emperor Conrad III, which was a total failure from the European point of view. And this was in 1147 to 49. Then we have 1144, the Edessa. Nur al-Din recaptures Edessa. Salahuddin then occupies Damascus. And Salahuddin also seizes Jerusalem in 1187. And then the Third Crusade in Jerusalem was led by Philip II Augustus of France and Holy Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa and Richard I of England. They failed to recapture Jerusalem, but with the German Crusade, recover most of the coast. So this was kind of a standstill. And death of Salahuddin died in 1193. Also, this is also the time when you have the assassins or the Hassasins form as well, too. So this is the interesting time period as well. So much for the Golden Age. This is an age where you have like crusades too. And then there's the Fourth Crusade, which diverted to the sack of Constantinople. Sorry, guys. And then we have the Albigensian Crusade starting from France. Then there was, in 1212, to Palestine, Children's Crusade to Palestine, but many sold into slavery in Marseille or died of disease and starvation. Then we have the Fifth Crusade, captured Los Demiesha in Egypt. And then the Sixth Crusade in 1229, led by Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II, Jerusalem recovered by negotiation with the Sultan of Egypt, but finally lost in 1244. Then we have the crusading armies invade Egypt in 1249. Then there was the Crusade of the Shepherds in 1251. So we're already at the end of the so-called Golden Period too, because in Egypt and Tunisia there's the 7th and 8th Crusade led by Louis. I'm guessing that this is the 8th or the 9th. I'm guessing the 9th. I could be wrong. Of France. Then the crusading armies invaded Tunisia. Acre, the last Syrian fortress and Christian fortress in Syria, regained by the Muslims in 1291. And then in France, there was the suppression of Templars in 1313. And that's where we're going to stop, because we're not going to go to the Ottomans, because that in itself deserves its own
episode.
So even the Seljuks would arguably deserve their own episode, because that is the first major Turkish invasion.
The Seljuks, the Ottomans, and we also have.
The Seljuks are the fathers of the Ottomans, since the Ottomans are a result of the Seljuk Sultanate of Rome,
right?
A state that a kingdom that was a breakaway part of the Seljuk Empire.
Yeah, and let me just see.
Oh, and before we go further, I just want to say, Shavaratri Subodaya for anyone who's watching and celebrating.
Oh, Sohagra?
It's a Subodaya for Shavaratri.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm fasting today for that. So if anyone's celebrating,
I did not know that. But yeah, also,
I'm here to help all you kufars.
All right, now our topic of the day, which is the Rashidun Caliphate. Now, what is interesting is that I included Abu Bakr, Siddiq, Omar bin Khattab, Usman bin Affan, Ali bin Abu Talib, and the fifth one, the most forgotten one I've included, was Hassan bin Ali, which marks the end of the Rashidun Caliphate. Because again, nobody talks about how it ended. People think it ended with Ali, but it actually ended with Hassan. And then from Hassan, it transferred to Muawiyah. So the first one we're going to talk about is, what do you call it? Fauji Serial, we're actually censored in a lot of places. That's why we don't have a lot of viewership. Apparently, our channel is somewhat censored in places like Pakistan. So, yeah, that's also another issue that we have to overcome. But that's what do you call it? I even have to ask Stops, like, where else are we censored at? If not just Pakistan, like what other countries?
Oh, I think we can probably fix the censorship in Pakistan by having concubines and such. I hear that's really popular there.
Quiet, you boy. Quiet. No, we're not doing that.
No.
Yeah, let's not do that, boy.
We are not Andrew Tate impersonators.
Yes, we're not that. Now, quit with these Andrew Tate ideas. All right. So,
Muhammad does this to me, so I'm sorry.
Now, Muhammad died in 632. This left an issue with who's going to succeed Muhammad. And allegedly, according to the Ghadir Kum incident, or the Ghadir Kum, which was written by not Ibn Ishaq, but it was written by, I think, Ibn Sa'd, was the writer who wrote this, that he was declared the Mullah, or the successor to Muhammad, so to speak. And what do you call it? Yeah, sorry, I just got this right. Yeah, Fauji Serial, thank you for answering and everything. Pakistan except Gunai Kabira. Oh man, this is just Pakistan is just weird. It's just weird. But yeah, back to, so while Muhammad was in his deathbed, Omar and Abu Bakr went to the courthouse in Saqifa, and allegedly they were interrupted this argument between the Ansar and the Muhajirun. The Muhajirun being the migrants from Mecca to Medina, and the Ansar being the Medinites. So, and then we also had the presence of tribes like Aus and Khazraj too, that had like, so it was a very turbulent, what do you call it, debate, and even led to like some fist fighting too. And so it's like the parliament where people start fighting. So all this was happening. Yeah, all this was happening, and the funeral procession was ignored practically by the Muslim world of Muhammad himself. And Muhammad was buried by Ali bin Abu Talib, and Ali read his janazah and then buried him. He waited for the entire Muslim community for 3 days. They didn't show up, so they just buried Muhammad right there. This goes to show how much they did not get, how much of the hell was broken loose, and how much they did not give two fucks about Muhammad, his funeral, so to speak. So during that Saqifa incident, Omar just declared like Abu Bakr as what do you call it, the first caliph, that is, and everybody had to pledge allegiance to him by shaking hands. Ali's house was, I think, in Medina, according to Sulaim bin Qais and also early sources like Tabari, was laid siege to. And apparently Ali was surrounded, pulled out. His wife tried to stop him. Omar actually like kicked her, and then she had a miscarriage, so to speak, because she was pregnant at them. And Fatima is being the daughter of Muhammad too. She died 6 months after, and I think she was only like in her 20s or 19 or something like that. So it was not a very good start. And Ali was only forced, like he accepted with a closed fist the allegiance, but not with an open fist, to show his reluctance. Omar didn't like that, but Abu Bakr's like, okay, stop. We had this enough. Because Omar was the more aggressive. And Ali only did it because his children like did not like seeing the fighting. So this is not a great start. Then we had the Ridha Wars, or the apostasy wars. People refused to pay the zakat. And also there were the apostates who started leaving Islam, so to speak, the fold of Islam. And this was seen as treachery. So, which this revolution was crushed. Then there was also the expansion that was happening too at the same time. And they were expanding into the Roman and Persian territories. Like, I think Abu Bakr, he sent Khalid bin Walid to capture the province of Iraq in 633. But then the province of Syria was the one that caused a bigger problem because Abu Bakr had sent 4 different armies. The first 3 actually failed to capture the Roman province of Syria. They did gain some territory, but it was like, a very difficult front. It was not until Khalid bin Walid, the well-renowned general, also he was well-known, quite well-known as a quite brutal, excellent general, but also very brutal. He's given the title Sword of Islam. Khalid bin Walid is also like, he killed somebody and took his wife and raped her. There's also that. He also ate the people alive, not alive, but like he also had can. And according to like Jihad and Terrorism by Anita Rai, he actually ate somebody after killing them. So yeah, Khalid bin Walid is quite a barbarian by those. And this is the guy who has the title of Sword of Islam. But he was quite a good general. He did once he was transferred to the Syrian front, this was what led to the Roman forces. And it was during the reign of Abu Bakr where Omar convinced him that, hey, we should try to start compiling the Quran. And they actually did start compiling the Quran during that time with the help of Zayd bin Sabit. And I believe someone here has arrived.
Sure.
Welcome.
Okay.
Nathan Khawan Adare.
Hello, Nathan.
Hello, Nathan.
If you want to unmute and say hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Cool. All right.
Yeah, so welcome, Nathan.
Thank you. You're doing great work, man.
Oh, thank you. Is there anything that you would like to contribute in regards to the Abu Bakr reign or anything in general?
You're doing excellent.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest you should probably, maybe I don't see it, but have it like a donation link so people can send you money. Support what you're doing.
Well, we do. Our channel is for free, though. We're doing it for free.
Oh,
we are kind of doing this as a.
Nick and I, we have separate Patreons, but we only do it for our separate project, which is I do it for mainly like mythology, like my different mythology research, both Islamic and non-Islamic. But also, also a Patreon.
I had a Patreon for fitness work where I advertise some fitness techniques. And such.
Yeah, I can definitely share a Patreon link, but that's my other. I also do Islamic on that too, because I recently did an article on gods of the Quran, and let me just share the link. Come on.
It was just a fleeting idea. You guys are doing great. I really like this. I'm gonna save this, download it, dissect it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can even react to the video too. You can also suggest videos as well. Definitely. Main Gin and Tonic, we're doing this for free because we believe, at least along with our predecessors, we believe this knowledge should be free. Don't go to Patreon, for specifically Gin and Tonic. Don't go to Patreon. No need, no ads, nothing like that. We are supposed to be free. We're not taking any money from YouTube either. So this is free knowledge. Think of it as public service. So I know we would like more viewership, but do share our content as well. But thank you for the kind words. Thank you so much. I've also shared the Patreon link in the chat box.
Yeah, I'm one of the subscribers to Moose's Patreon.
Oh, yeah, he's one of the. Thank you so much for your support. And yeah, what do you call it? Is there anything else any questions you want to ask, Mr. Zed? What do you call
Nathan?
Nathan?
No, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just had this. I was enjoying it. I was like, let me join and suggest this to you guys. So just go ahead. I'm taking notes.
Yeah. All right. Do take notes. Okay. So
and also, Nathan, at any point, if you do want to react in the future and such, I always store the MP4 files of the videos we do. So if you need me to send that to you for a specific episode, I'm more than happy to do that to you for a reaction video or such.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this is good stuff because like I do study Islam a lot. I don't know why I have a passion for it. It's just like it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And
the history is fascinating. The history is pretty fascinating, though.
Yeah. And then people like us also get checks from Israel to talk about this stuff, right? That's a common narrative.
We don't.
No, I know we don't, but like
you know what I call
we would wish that we did, because then at least we would have had money for our troubles.
I know. At least for any legal troubles or any like protection we need, we would at least have money, but we don't have that. We're a bunch of
poor. We're just a bunch.
We're like those poor philosophers from the Greek world who are practically begging.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the history is fascinating, but it's just goes to show that it's a very elaborate lie. It's very well crafted, and it really takes a lot to really discern, and
it's debatable. I mean, there is a lot of issues with the sources, but you have also things that actually does make sense when it comes to the Islamic narrative as well. And you do have things that otherwise would be very strange if they actually did not happen and were accepted.
Because like some incidents did happen. Like, for example, what we're going to discuss, like the caliphates, the expansion, for example, as well as certain laws were introduced, and they were kind of, at least for a historical sense, commonplace for the time. Like we were just discussing the apostasy wars, the Ridda wars. Now, and during this time, apostasy was seen as treachery, or was seen as betrayal of your country. But again, However, this apostasy was more due to the fact that they refused to pay zakat, more so.
Okay.
And I think it was more financially motivated too by Abu Bakr. So it was an attempt to maintain control. And again, which goes to, in the lie in the sense, it's not a divine thing for sure. None of the religions are divine thing. None of them are. But it's it goes like, if you see it from like, from a historical standpoint, it makes sense, but this is not from a god for sure. This is not from a god. So, but back to the
let's get back to it. I don't want to be a
let's back to the Quran. That is, I was actually going to reference Zayd bin Sabit was hired by Abu Bakr and Omar to quote unquote collect passages that were written down, that sayings or things that allegedly Muhammad had said. This was in Hearts of Men. This is even documented in Sahih al-Bukhari too. I don't remember the exact reference, but it was, he's collected it from memory. He collected it from what was written in stones, leaves, etc. Compiled it to one book. That's what Zayd bin Sabit did. So Zayd bin Sabit is
Can I interject?
Yeah.
So there's a hadith that Muhammad actually says, I think the name is Ubay. I don't have the full name. And he said he's the Qadi, like, the judge of the Quran. And if they want to do any compilation or if anything, they should refer to him, right?
there's also another hadith where Zayd bin Sabit was also told to learn languages like Syriac, and he was one of the major scribes to Zayd bin Sabit. Yeah. So Zayd bin Sabit, and I think Ubay was also one of the authors too. And there's a few other, I think we did a video on authors of the Quran. We might have to revisit that again, like who wrote the Quran.
Yeah, but my point in bringing that up is that Muhammad, who is the prophet, or supposed to be the prophet, had stated whom they should be taking that from, which is Ubay. Yeah. But Uthman got it from Zayd, who is not authorized by the prophet. So
keep in mind, this isn't Usman though. This is Abu Bakr and Omar.
Abu Bakr and Omar.
Yeah, Usman's period gets a little different though, because with what do you call it, the compilation of the Quran in during Abu Bakr's period at least. He's long. It's also, there was another controversy according to Sulaim bin Qais, another hadith, a Shia hadith, where Ali had also compiled the Quran, and some Christian sources do agree Ali also was one of the writers of the Quran too. So Ali bin Abu Talib, that is, and Ali had his version of the Quran compiled too, but his version was rejected in favor of Zayd bin Sabit's version.
Okay.
So Ubay is ignored. Ali bin Abu Talib, the closest to Muhammad, is ignored, but we have Zayd bin Sabit being the person who actually is whose work is selected practically.
Okay.
So this is how messy the Quran compilation already is. There's only the start, and it's already messy to begin with. So, and this is during the very first caliphate. So I think that's Abu Bakr died in 634. This is before the campaign of Jerusalem, and Umar actually took over. And Umar was elected, and he reigned for 10 years practically. The most famous of his campaigns was the Jerusalem one, where in 634 they captured Jerusalem from the Romans. And the interesting part of Umar's reign was that even though people say it was Usman who appointed Muawiyah as the governor of Syria, but it was actually Umar bin Khattab who had actually appointed Muawiyah bin Abu Sufyan, who was an Umayyad, as governor of Syria. And initially he had hired...
There are discussions about that, but Omar, let me add something about Omar that I want to add.
Yes.
If I were to define the four, classical Rashidun caliphs in a way, I would say that Abu Bakr was the continuer of Muhammad's policy. He was the good caliph that just continued it and was pretty efficient and did things in a good way. How he managed the Ridda Wars shows that he was at least, competent when it came to administration and handling issues.
Yeah.
But Omar is the one that one asked if he was the thug. I would not say that. I would say that he was the neurotic guy that was a true believer in a certain sense.
Yeah.
He was also kind of a control freak because he sent instructions, for example, in Kufa, in how they were to build the city, in how the streets were to be lined, despite him being far away.
Yeah.
In on campaign far away, he wanted to control everything, and he also appointed like overseers, constantly controlling everything, created a lot of issues with people that were under him, not wanting to have some sort of independence and some sort of local control, because he interfered with everything. And he also sent Muawiyah, or tried to push up Uthman in order to support him in these various games where he tried to control everything.
Yeah.
Which also, where he probably put Muawiyah, or it could have been that it was Uthman afterwards that did. But anyway, he did, and he was hyper focused on details, which also resulted in him ignoring real issues.
Yes, and what's funny though, initially it was Yazid, Muawiyah's older brother, not the son, the older brother, the older son of Abu Sufyan, was initially appointed as the governor of Syria. However, Yazid, the older brother, apparently he died due to some disease or sickness. And Muawiyah got his chance to become the governor of Syria, in the Syria province at least. And this is where things get very interesting, is that many people even suspect Umar bin Khattab or his tribe allying with the Umayyad clan, and sort of had this conspiracy to prevent the Hashemite Ali to ever even succeed him after he, even after he died. So this is something people say about Omar. And also, Omar's, I forgot to mention here, the Pact of Omar, which was his control over the Christians and the Dhimmi, for example, the non-believers, the Christians and Jews, that they had to be, there were rules against them. He established rules against the Dhimma. And
because this goes into how Omar was, he kind of like, if I was to define him, I would say that he was very neurotic, hyper focused on details, very scattered. Hyper focused, which made him almost scatterbrained in how he, even the historians afterwards that are Muslim and trying to portray him as good are kind of like he was kind of like this, where he tried to control this, but sadly he neglected this in the process.
Yeah. And he also, when he established rules like Christians and Jews cannot teach their children the Quran, or they cannot use the salam greeting, or they should be walking the narrower pathway, the jizya rules as well. And also, he even drove a scribe out of Medina just because he was Christian. And Amr bin As, even though Amr bin As, one of his generals, was actually impressed by the scribe, he was like, no, drive him out of Medina because he's a Christian. So he had this bias, and he was very discriminatory towards Christians. So
yes.
Omar,
and it was under him that Christians and Jews were totally forbidden from the Arabic Peninsula. Eventually,
yes, under his reign, and he was also the one who expelled some of the Jewish farmers in the gardens that initially belonged to Fatima, that she inherited from Muhammad. So Baghi Fidak, that's they call it. And even though Muhammad agreed to keep them there, he got rid of them, and he made them go to an exile, so to speak. So this was where he was very almost fascist, even in many aspects too. Very fascist. And
Musa, I just wanted to ask a question. I know Dudabai.
Don't use the word fascist about the past like this. Sorry, it makes me, cringe.
No. Keep in mind, though, it's very parallel to fascist. And also, I kind of see it as very fascist. But then again, it also is very, it was normal of the time, for sure, yes. But
it was, the problem with Omar was that he was kind of...
The problem is he's portrayed as the rightly guided caliph.
Yes.
There's no rightly guided in,
No. That thing we can agree on, but I still don't like using those terms about anachronistically applying those terms to the past.
No, I can still... I find there's no problem with it, because keep in mind, though, the past is a reflection of us as human beings, how far we've come. So we have to be honest with ourselves. We really have to be honest with ourselves how we were like in the past. So I know you don't like it, but forgive me. I will use said terms.
We were all neo-Nazi fascists.
Yeah. History Culture Channel. I'm interested in when the prohibition of alcohol came. It's a good question, Ginny.
I posted the answer in the chat,
so
but
posted an answer. He said this one's a hard one to answer, and I agree. But it could have happened from the beginning as abstinence is a long history, in Judeo-Christian, and then it could have evolved from that. Yeah, so the prohibition of alcohol, I feel like it came in the later 7th, probably 8th or 9th century, personally.
Yeah, but it could also have came from the beginning. I mean, the story behind it is that God revealed it in Revelation in the Quran after Muhammad got drunk. But it could also been, it could also have been other things connected to this, since there has existed, sects that have, forbidden alcohol in Judaism and Christianity before this as well. And Islam could have evolved from something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, interesting, back to Omar's reign, there was a continued expansion into Roman territories and Persian territories. This was and this was very, very fast expansion. And this was unprecedented for the time, too. Because in this case, the Arab armies captured Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq, Syria, and they also expanded into Egypt and the Iranian territories, too. And one of the famous incidents in Egypt happened with Amr bin al-As, and this actually is recorded in history. Amr bin al-As did have a campaign in Egypt from 639 to 642, and he was able to take over Egypt. So this was one of the more famous, at least even non-Islamic sources have recorded this campaign in Egypt. So to say that, most of the characters are fictional or not real, it's hard to say, because Omar, we can definitely say, is a real character. Amr bin As, real character, and also
because he is even recorded in contemporary Byzantine sources.
Histories. So when I've seen revisionists say, oh, these characters are fictional, or so and so is fictional, it's like, this is going to be a difficult one, because this is recorded stuff, and it's going to be very difficult to disprove which one.
I mean, the thing is, many of these things aren't there so much that we have difficulty with the events. It's the dates of the events that are
I think it's
kind of changed,
that are just all over the place.
Yes,
that I think do need a revisit for sure, because I remember Doctrina Jacobi points at a prophet in 634 CE, which a lot of people say could be Muhammad himself, the prophet that arrives in Jerusalem. However, many also say, another, I think Stopson, as well as another colleague of mine, said the prophet does sound more like Musaylama, the other prophet, because there were multiple leader prophets during that time. And also, yes, Musaylama, Tuleha, all these other prophets did engage in battles with the Rashidun caliphs. But some of them also aligned themselves with the caliphs, and then, kind of expanded. That way, they also helped expand the territory.
You have to also understand that this wasn't as central. The early Rashidun Caliphate and also later caliphates weren't centralized state in the manner we think about it in the modern terms.
Oh, yes.
But they were rather confederations of various smaller tribal groups and clans that could act very independently, and often did act very independently.
Like, keep in mind, a lot of these, when we did the video on gods of the Quran, and the different gods that were worshipped, each clan practically resided in different regions of the peninsula. And many of these clans had different leaders. So they had to, it was very, like you said, decentralized. The only capital was, or major city was Medina and Mecca, one would say. If Mecca, assuming Mecca existed.
They also had captured many of major cities in Yemen. And I did a couple of months ago, like 4 months ago, I actually did a computation using methods connected to how you determine the amount of people living in a Roman city within an area, dependent upon the urban development that is viewable in the ruins. And I applied those methods on old Sana'a in Yemen. because that's a very old city. It goes back to even 3,000 years before Christ.
Yes.
And that city, I applied it to Old Sana, which would have been the time of the prophet, because that's what. And I assumed some certain things, and I got the number to have been living in Old Sana to at least have been around 200,000 people.
And
it's a very big city. Remember, in the High Middle Ages, I mean later in French history, Paris in the 13th and 14th century had about in Paris proper had about 100,000.
Wow.
Yeah, just so you can get it, these aren't small cities. These are still big cities in the Middle East.
Interesting.
That they had managed to conquer before, so they did have the manpower.
And keep in mind, Kufa was established during the time of Omar as well, too. And Kufa actually used to be one of the major. It was, I think, called. It was one of the centers for the Christian world, actually. During the during the Sasanian and Byzantine period, it was.
Because around that area, they used to,
Lakhmids.
Because Christians were kind of under the Sassanids. The Christians, these Christians they are not Nestorian Christians, but they are the churches of the East follow a theology which is similar to Nestorians. They believe things about the nature of Christ and the nature of God in Christ that are very special. But they were kind of, I would say, sometimes persecuted, but sometimes tolerated as a foil against the Romans, because the Romans followed classical dualism.
The Lakhmids were sort of like a buffer state, along with the Sassanids against Rome. So they were sort of like already established as such. And Medina was very close to the Lakhmid state. But yeah, Judabites, I asked, how big were these armies? So how big? I would say at least, I actually found some sources saying at least like 40,000, 50,000, 60,000 men easily raised. That's the maximum number. However, there could be.
I think it could be higher than that as a maximum.
Yeah. And however,
that would be what they could have moved usually.
Yeah. However, there is an army raised by Khalid bin Walid, again from one area of Medina, was approximately 3,000 men, at least. And this is one area though. They would raise armies from like different parts of the peninsula, from different tribes and different regions. So it's very difficult to assess, so to speak. So at least the bare minimum would be like in the 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. Maximum could be like above 60,000, 40, 50, 60,000, more than that even.
I think you are low bowling it a lot. I think that...
I know. I am probably underestimating it.
Yes, I would say that what most armies that they you moved around with, like an army under a normal commander, like a separate military unit, would have been around 10 to 20,000 men.
Right.
But the total number of troops in all armies would probably be above at least 100,000 men. Like the total of all military forces. They wouldn't, have all of those forces at the same place, because that would strain logistics in such a way that it would have been very hard to maintain that for anything but a very short while. But they would have maintained several armies of about 10 to 20,000.
Yes.
Going around conquering.
Yeah. Though keep in mind, when I use Khalid bin Walid's example of raising 30,000 men, he only raised it from a short area of Medina, for example, a short area. That was just one area. He raised armies from other parts of Arabia too. So,
yes.
So this is just one area, 3,000 men for one area only. So you can imagine how many men they were able to raise. And even during the wars with Muhammad's campaigns too, Muhammad, despite being in the minority, was able to raise, was able to do 300 men as just bandits, practically. 300 bandits he could find. And then that slowly expanded into like thousands and thousands of soldiers. So it was a slow rise. Like they started with like smaller units, but then
Moose. I also have a question. Is this around the time when they started coming into the Gandhara region, or I think it's called Kandahar right now?
No, that's far later.
That's far later.
Because from what I remember, the Rashidun Caliphate in the Indian frontier, they had so Kandahar was actually conquered by the Chachawalor in 631 ADE. From what I remember, so I was wondering if like that's the same thing or that is approaching.
I don't think I know Omar did expand into. I think it was during the period of Usman that they expanded into Kandahar,
and they were recalled during the time of Ali because the conflict with
because of the civil wars. Yeah, the civil wars with Muawiyah, Aisha, as well as the Naharwan Knights. But yeah, now we'll get to Omar was assassinated, by the way. He was assassinated by the Persian slave. Apparently, allegedly, Omar also used to discriminate against Persian slaves, but also he found that the Persian slaves.
This was why he wanted to build Kufa and all of these other Arabic cities, because he didn't want Arabs to intermix. He and Uthman had this view about that would weaken the true sacred bloodlines of the Arabs if they intermixed with
exactly. They had this weird Arab supremacist ideology. And when he was injured by Abu Lulu Feroz when he got stabbed. But when he lay in his deathbed for 3 days, he died 3 days later. He appointed a 6-man council. From the 6 men, it was Ali bin Abu Talib, the first candidate, Usman bin Affan, Talha, Zubair bin al-Awam, Saad bin Abi Waqas, and Abdul Rahman bin Auf. So these are the 6 men. By the way, this is the Talha who also went into battle with Ali and also allegedly had an affair with Aisha. Allegedly. So same guy. So Usman ended up being elected in the process. And it was he reigned the longest, from 644 to 656. However, people even argue that it was from Usman's time that the Umayyads actually started taking control, or at least
because Uthman gave favoritism to his own closest family members.
Yes, and he gave top positions to Umayyad clan members, and definitely we can say people like Muawiyah, people like Marwan, people like Marwan bin Hakam, and other members of Umayyad clan like Walid got put in posts like Kufa, places like Medina, places like Syria. So these were he was able to, he showed a lot of nepotism and a lot of favoritism to his own family members. And it was during his reign that the Osmanic Codex was the finalized version of at least the earliest Quran. The Quran still was in its early phase of development still, because he was told, hey, there are other parts of the Arabic world, they're mispronouncing things, that's the issue. So he's had one final version. He told Zayd bin Sabit and all these other scribes, hey, compile a version, use the Qurayshi dialect, or the dialect of the Quraysh, because that was the language of Muhammad. So that was the dialect that was used. And then the other copies of the Quran with slight variants were burned. So he burned all the rest, but he kept this codex, was canon, practically, was considered canon by Usman. So it was during the Usman period that, we got the final version of the Quran. Also, the height of the Rashidun expansion.
Yes, it was the height Rashidun happened during Osman, but or rather during Ali, because some orders were delayed during Ali. But North Africa, as in Western Africa, and even conquering Spain didn't happen until the Umayyads proper later.
Now, keep in mind, though, they raided Spain, though. They even raided Spain. Apparently, he conquered parts of North Africa from the Romans, were able to raid Spain and get the Iberian Peninsula. And he was able to capture Cyprus and the island of Rhodes.
No, that didn't happen until Tariq.
No, this is, I'm talking about Cyprus. Cyprus and the island of Rhodes.
Cyprus, yes, but he didn't, I mean, the Iberian Peninsula.
He didn't capture it. He raided the coastal area.
All right. If they sent out boats or raided it, I can see that,
yes.
Yeah.
Raid. No, not conquer. Conquering is different. Raiding is different. So it was started off with the raids only so far. And apparently, he also was raiding the coastal city of Sicily. Sicily was also raided. Not conquered, raided.
So, coastal city, you mean the island?
Yeah, the island of Sicily was raided, but not like, a full-on like expansion. Because the expansion, I think, like Nick was saying, was now towards Afghanistan, the Kandahar region, and may have sort of slipped into the like more so flirting with the Indian territory at this point, Pakistan-India territory. So this was the expansion. Yes, expansion still happened. However, this was also the start of the first fitna, or the internal turmoil started to happen, because many were dissatisfied with Usman's policies. And there was a huge, economic problem with the have-nots and the have, there was a big difference between wealth distribution too. So people from Kufa and Egypt, like the Egyptians and the Kufans, who actually were also fans of Ali, were against Usman, and they revolted against Usman. Now, initially, there was a peace agreement where Usman said, okay, I'll give you what you want. And then when they were going back, they caught a messenger. The messenger had Usman's letter with his seal on it, stating that once these guys get home, execute them. This drove the rebels mad. They went back to Usman and they demanded to know, this is just your servant, isn't it? He's like, yes, but he left without my permission. They said, this is your camel. Yes, but I didn't know it was gone. This is your letter. It has your seal on it. But he's like, oh, this was forged. So Usman is practically caught red-handed, and he's denying it in front of the raucous crowd. And so they laid siege to his house because it was in reaction to the execution order that he had given to get rid of the rebels. So they were able to break in. I think Marwan was trying to defend, because Marwan bin Hakam was his son-in-law. So Marwan was also trying to defend the house and some of the Umayyad, but they were not able to fully stop the rebels because there was too many of them. They busted in, they pulled his beard, and even his teeth broke, punched him, assaulted him, then stabbed him to death practically. And they didn't even bother burying him for days. They just left at that point. So this was quite one of the brutal, this took a brutal turn, to say the least, in the history of the Rashidun Caliphate, the assassination of Usman. And this in itself would cause problems in Ali's caliphate. Because Ali's caliphate, Ali bin Abu Talib, when he took over, because the people elected him to take over, according to Tabari, people were practically saying, Ali, please take over, please take over. Ali said, okay, then, pledge allegiance. So, and this was where, this was around 656 CE. that was when Ali was able to establish that he was the new caliph. And he also, I know it wasn't immediate, but he shifted the capital from Medina to Kufa. And this was a strategic sense that he wanted to centralize and make everything more central. However, this is also the problem of the problem was that he had a lot of Umayyads removed as governors, and he didn't. He tried to like do a what do you call it? A more socialistic sense of distribution of wealth. He tried, allegedly, according to writers, but it wasn't very popular. His attempted reforms weren't very popular. Also, many
he was also in a very tough spot after Omar's rather chaotic mismanagement, and then Uthman's, better management, but also very corrupt management. He kind of got the short end of a stick.
Yes, and a lot of historians I find are a bit unfair to Ali because he's taking care of a massive empire that's also falling apart because of the mismanagement of the preceding caliphs, at least, like which is Usman and Omar specifically. So he's trying to fix this mess, and then Muawiyah is further trying to expand his political ambitions too. So he's kind of like stuck, practically.
Yeah.
So with Ali, it was practically a civil war-like situation, and he was also accused of covering for Muhammad bin Abu Bakr, who was one of the assassins of one of the assassins of what's his name, Usman, because Ali, when Abu Bakr died, Ali raised Muhammad bin Abu Bakr, the youngest son of Abu Bakr, as a stepson, that is, because he lost his father. So he was left as an orphan. So Ali took him under his wing. Now, Muhammad bin Abu Bakr, many say he was one of the murderers, some say he wasn't. It's debatable at this point whether he was part of the rebels or not, but he definitely was there. He was there for sure. And he, So Aisha's campaign, Aisha, Talha, and Zubair's campaign, was that, they were demanding that the killers of Usman to be punished. However, in defense of Ali, I would say it's not because of the Shia in me, but at least in what we would say is that there were so many of them. You really can't go after each and every person. Like, this is going to be a messy situation. And on top of that, Aisha was also against Usman too for a long time. So it was very ironic that Aisha turns her stance against Ali. So, and by the way, this is the 9-year-old who's kind of fully grown at this point. Fully grown, I would say. Leader of an army, practically. So, Aisha bint Abu Bakr, Talha, and Zubair lead an army in Iraq in Jamal, where this is an area near Basra, where Aisha's on a camel. She's leading, and she's kind of like the commander, where there's the fighting, and Ali's commander is his son, Hassan bin Ali. So how the battle ended, the Battle of Jamal, was, I think it was 656, 657 CE, around that time. And Ali was able to win when he sent Hassan to cut the legs of the camel that Aisha's riding on. So Hassan went, he swept in, and he cut the legs of the camel that Aisha was on. And it just, bam, fell flat. And that caused a ruckus in the entire army. Everybody started to flee. There was mass confusion in the ranks of Aisha. And then Aisha, when she was captured by her own brother, by the way, Muhammad bin Abu Bakr, allegedly she said, "Oh, who dares touch me?" And I'm like, "I'm your brother. Calm down." So this it was I think it was early origins of early Shia Islam by Oxford University. This was an article that I read that it was Muhammad bin Abu Bakr who rescued her from the mess. So Aisha was captured, and Aisha admitted her wrongdoing. Ali had her sent back with some both male and female guards. Surprisingly, female guards wearing male armor too, and with Hassan bin Ali, his eldest son, to like lead the way to take her back to her home. And Aisha did have regrets going against Ali at this point. So Talha and Zubair got killed, and Ali was saddened by this because not only were they distant relatives of Ali, but they were also allies of Ali for such a long time. And they were close friends of Ali. And then they turned against him. So he was very upset over that. So there's a lot of betrayal going on. Then we have the Battle of Siffin against Muawiyah bin Abu Sufyan. Now, many Christian writers, many historians say, oh, Muawiyah won this battle. Hang on. That is not exactly how it happened. Ali, along with his commander Malik Yashtam, were actually in control of the battle, that is. So they almost were at the edge of Muawiyah's camp, practically. Muawiyah could have been killed at any point. And at this point, they raised the Quran, like they started putting Quran pages on the spears and started raising it as a form of, hey, we surrender. But Ali wanted his troops to say, no, this is a trick. Go finish them right now. But his troops mutinied against Ali and said, no, we refuse because they're holding the Quran. And that's where Ali was like, shit, so we're going to have to call a stalemate. So there was this arbitration between Musa bin Ashari, a representative of Ali, and Amr bin al-As. And there was this, arbitration that they were trying to, Musa bin Ashari proposed that let's remove both Ali and Muawiyah from the seats. Because allegedly, Ali wanted Muawiyah out of the governorship of Syria because of alleged corruption. However, Amr bin As said, I only accept Ali getting removed, but not Muawiyah. And that's where arbitration kind of failed. So there was this still like weird standstill at this point. Like Ali had the eastern territories, Muawiyah had the western territories. Because like here, he lost regions of Syria, parts of Anatolia, Sicily, and North Africa. Again, parts that were conquered. And, so this was where the empire was divided in half. Many even proposed this is the point where Shia and Sunni Islam split, but it's not as easy as it sounds because this is, again, there's some political differences right here. And there was a final battle between Ali and the Kharjids in Naharawan. And Ali crushed this rebellion because Kharjids were this faction of the army that deserted Ali during the Battle of Siffin. And then the Kharjids started spreading chaos and started, not accepting anything. So Ali had to crush this rebellion too, at the Battle of Naharawan. Also, I almost forgot, there was an invasion by a Constantine. I don't remember which Constantine was. He tried to invade the empire, but his ships got wrecked, allegedly. Either by a sea storm or
yes, I know that there was some Byzantine emperors. His name was Constantine, some number.
Yeah, some number. He attempted from Rome, he attempted to invade Ali's caliphate, but he got, either the ships got wrecked, probably got robbed by Ali's troops themselves too. You never know. Or paid pirates. So shit happens at sea. So that's what happened. So
the same thing actually happened. Major fleets just disappearing because if you sail a lot of ships in the same area, then if you get into a storm that would have killed one ship, you will kill the entire fleet as they are so close to each other.
Yeah.
I mean, these things happen. People could say, oh, it's divine will, but on the other hand, you know that Morocco could have been a colonial power on par with Spain and Portugal if they didn't, get subject to a storm that more or less wrecked their entire fleet when they sent it over in order to colonize Southern America.
Well, exactly. And Morocco did attempt to send a fleet, and it was just not successful. And the sea journeys were very risky. They were very risky campaigns. So this was kind of weirdly commonplace for shipwrecks. So yeah, which in itself, after the Kharjids, there were a few surviving Kharjids. Allegedly, there were only 9 or 10 survivors from the battle that they fought against Ali. And they had raised an army of like 10,000, the Kharjids. And I think Ali was able to like rout them completely. Now, one of the Kharjids, Ibn Muljam, was in the mosque of Kufa when Ali was about to lead the Fajr prayer. He had a poisoned sword, and he struck Ali's head. And that was where Ali was assassinated. He was captured still and punished. But Ali died a few days later due to the injuries. However, there were, attempts on Muawiyah as well as Amr bin As, but they failed by Kharij assassins. Because they wanted to get rid of all of them, all Muawiyah as well as Ali, as well as Amr bin As. And there's also another interesting thing that Malik-e-Ashtar, one of Ali's commanders, as well as Muhammad bin Abu Bakr, when they were sent to campaigns to regain Egypt, I think Muawiyah had them killed. So, or at least they, Malik was poisoned on the way and then I think it was Muhammad bin Abu Bakr got killed in battle. I'm not 100% sure what exactly happened, but look into it. My apologies. I didn't do as much research as I should have because I'm starting to remember these things. So this is where Ali's caliphate ended in 661 CE. And it kind of goes to show, and a lot of historians say Ali kind of became the second, another Lakhmid or Persian king compared to the Roman Muawiyah. So it was like Rome versus Persia all over again, but in a more Arab sense. And then finally, we have the forgotten Rashidun Caliph, which is Hassan bin Ali. This is where the transition from Umayyad to, from Rashidun to Umayyad happens during this time. So, what happens here?
According to Shia traditions, though some Sunnis do give some credit to Hassan
bin Ali as well. So historians agree he reigned for a few months, like roughly 6 to 14 months, roughly speaking. And Muawiyah, the war was still ongoing, and Muawiyah marched to face Hassan with approximately 60,000 men. Now, Hassan was waiting with an army of his own. And this was in the area, I think it was called, it was somewhere in Iraq. Shit, I forgot to mention the area. And, however, there was a mutiny with Hassan's forces, and allegedly, Muawiyah had bribed them or something like that. So 8,000 to 12,000 men deserted Hassan's camp. So they ended up doing peace talks instead because there was no need for the bloodshed. And Hassan had agreed to step down and hand over the caliphate to Muawiyah of the United Empire, but under conditions. He said that, you're going to follow God's laws. You're going to follow the law of the Quran. You're going to end the cursing of Ali or your propaganda against Ali. You're going to also give an annual payment to Kufa's treasury too. And you're also going to favor Bani Hashim in succession. Or there's one of the biggest condition was that Muawiyah was not going to name his own successor. Allegedly, Muawiyah hated this agreement. He really hated this. So it ended up as Muawiyah had, Hassan bin Ali assassinated via, he bribed his wife to put poison in his drink. And this was marked the official end of the Rashidun Caliphate and the start of the Umayyad period. So that's where the Rashiduns ended, so to speak. It ended with a lot of turmoil, so to speak. But do you guys have any thoughts or anything like that? Anything to add?
Yes, I wanted to add one thing that I find quite interesting. And that is that even during the later Umayyad period, you still actually did have councils that selected the caliphs.
Yes.
There actually did exist a kind of formalized system of approval. It wasn't absolute, hereditary monarchy where because they could say no, and that was one of the issues that happens with Muawiyah's son later, and why he is so, because he barely managed to pass the muster.
Yes,
and it's also why he gets so anxious and sends out, and it gets extremely bloody later with various conflicts with Zubayr's son down in the Arabic Peninsula, and with the infamous actions that happened at Karbala. Yes.
Yeah, the Karbala, as well as like the Hurra incident in Medina as well too, the Battle of Hurra. And there we could actually go to Umayyads. We can actually give it a start if you want.
I feel kind of like that I need to read up a bit again, but
on the Umayyads?
Let's give it a try.
Okay, I have a link that I sent to Nick. Nick, I hope you did not delete said link. I trust
in WhatsApp, or
I think I sent you on WhatsApp, because I know we discuss a lot of things on WhatsApp. Because we even shared a link on Augustine, and what do you call it? Let me just see if I have the quick link.
I don't delete anything on WhatsApp.
Yeah, no, I had to delete pictures only, or at least like kind of, yeah. Like we did the Roman Empire. Was it worth saving? Yeah, because like my memory issues, I have some memory issues with my phone, so. But thankfully, I got like an SD card, so I just now move it to SD card. There we go. Umayyad Dynasty. Again, this is a general page that I found. We can actually give it a shot. We can give it a start from the Umayyad Dynasty, that is. And this started with Muawiyah. So this was from the World History Encyclopedia. Yeah, I'm not going to donate to you. So this caliphate roughly started between 661 and then ended in 750. Though I kind of argue Osman.
It didn't end. It continued. It did. You can't argue that Osman was
in North Africa and Spain. Yeah, it did continue at least for another 200 years or so.
And I mean, they were more or less the patrons of the Maliki school, so they still had an actually strong influence upon.
That would make sense, because they would
Islamic development.
Yeah, they would be the patrons of the Maliki school of thought. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually, I argue that the Maliki school actually evolved from the tribal allegiance traditions of the Umayyads, since the Maliki school is the school that focuses upon tribal and local cultural customs being integrated as a part of the Sharia.
Yes,
and considering that the Umayyads always had this network of very localized government.
Yeah.
In contrast to what many of these Shias with centralized rulership and what even Umar wanted.
Yeah, and it's with what do you call it? Crap, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so with the Umayyads, they have a more significant influence than we kind of give them credit for. Because though, let's face it, we don't have a lot of written records from Muslims during the Umayyad periods, but we do have a lot of alternative records from the Umayyad period from other sources, that is. So, but I kind of agree with David Wood on this one. Like, they were too busy fighting each other and conquering territories. They didn't have time to write stuff. But I feel like a lot of their stuff could have been also destroyed too.
I think a lot of it has been destroyed and but there is also a lot of documents that exist in a lot of archives that we have simply not accessed, or more likely, so we haven't gotten the funding to actually do research into these documents. I actually found some very significant documents from the Umayyad period, but no one has looked at them.
Yeah,
it was one of those hadith collections that aren't in any of the traditional hadith collections, but date from the Umayyad period.
Yeah,
and I thought this could be interesting to look into.
The hadith collections from the Umayyad period, right? Yeah.
Yes, those aren't from any of the traditional hadith collections of today.
Yeah,
and the only hadith collection that is from the Umayyad period, kind of, that still survives as an officially recognized, canonized hadith collection is the Muwatta.
The Muwatta bin Malik bin Anas, right?
Yes.
Yes, so that's the only one that survives from the Umayyad period, and
yes,
it's kind of, I haven't taken a look into it,
and it is actually radically different than the others in many regards.
That's what I've heard too. I've heard that. I've heard it's very radically different.
Especially when you look into how it goes with when Muhammad, for example, discusses land usage.
Yes.
And the right to land. It argues for a more private or family-based system rather than a much more common ground system that is argued by the other hadith collections and by the other Sunni schools.
I do want to look into the Muwatta bin Malik Anas, because that way we can kind of see like where these ideas evolved from, or what was early Islam like, so to speak.
The strange thing is that the later hadiths, in many regards, are almost more like this traditional view of Middle Eastern Christianity and Judaism. So it seems that they almost. So it gives the kind of implication that Islam was more radically different in the beginning, but evolved to become more similar later.
Yeah, and it goes to.
But it could also be. It could also be just a coincidence in certain regards.
But keep in mind, a lot of Zoroastrian traditions also make their way into the canonized Sahih Hadiths too, like the 5 prayers.
Yes,
we have stuff like the night journey itself. We even have beliefs of the bridge, the hell bridge that's described. And so a lot of these Zoroastrian things do make their way into the Islamic mainstream, even though the Quranic prayer is only 3 times a day, and originally more similar to the Jewish timings rather than the Zoroastrian timings. So this is where it gets very interesting. And also, it kind of goes to show that it's kind of adopting, then leaving, like surrounding belief systems. And
yes.
Also, in my most recent article that I did on gods of the Quran too, that I just posted recently, and I shared it on Discord, is that a lot of the gods and the traditions of the Arabian Peninsula were influenced by surrounding areas, not only from Babylon, but also from Canaan, but also from the south, which is the Himyar and the Abyssinian regions. So we have many surrounding influences that come and go. They come and go. So it's kind of sort of going in a weird recycling process. So it's not a complete adapting and going, but it's very, going in a circle. Some things get left out because of unpopularity or just not given enough attention. Some things just catch on because they're more popular, or more, I would say for the time being, more applicable, so to speak.
And it also depends on like who's the writer too, because Bukhari himself is Persian. He's influenced by, he used to be Zoroastrian. So he's a convert from Zoroastrianism. So this could make sense that, he could use some existing beliefs and kind of mix with the Islamic beliefs to get more followers. And I've seen like writers like even Allama Majlisi, like who wrote Bihar al-Anwar of Shia Islam. He used traditions of Jesus. I think it was an attempt to get more Christian followers in Iran during the Safavid period. So I've seen like these writers do like, use their own pre-existing beliefs to kind of mesh with their, try to get more followers.
Yeah, I can see that too. But the thing is that traditionally, if you look at many Middle Eastern political entities before Islam that follow Semitical religious traditions, both Abrahamic and pagan Semitic traditions, they always had stronger emphasis on this is the direct voice of God or the gods coming to you. If you look at, for example, the law code of Hammurabi as a good example, it says straight out, this is from the god Nergal Shamesh.
Yes, Nergal.
The god, the god of the sun, the god of the death, the god of that stands above all.
Absolutely.
And he gives this law that is of righteousness to people to implement. But if you look at the Maliki school, they do give this, but and also early Umayyad, but they also give this very much. But we must respect local tradition.
Yes.
So we kind of bend it here, which is usually something you don't want if you have a divine law.
Yeah, and it's funny too. Like there are people who have doubts that even were the Umayyads even practicing Muslims to begin with, because Muawiyah, according to The Shadow of the Sword, by Tom Holland, actually went on a Christian pilgrimage to Jerusalem. So they're kind of
there is also early Umayyad coins, but they have argued if this is just because they didn't change the coin, because in the past you had when you struck coin, you made coins by striking kind of a pressure plate almost, but a stamp like thing, and then you made a coin by it cutting off the rest of the sheet, gold, metal, gold or silver. But we have seen in some of these old coins that there are still crosses on them.
Yes, like even till the time of, I would even argue, Abdul Malik. It was only in his time that the coin started to have a different shape, and this is I would say 60 years into not only just into the Islamic expansions, and 30 years into the Umayyads, because we already had at this point, we already had Muawiyah, we've already had Yazid, we already had Muawiyah bin Yazid, we already had Marwan bin Hakam at this point. So we've already had 4 different caliphs at this point. So that kind of begs an interesting question. Were these caliphs even Muslim to begin with? So this, it poses an interesting question. Were the Umayyads, did they become more Islamic later? Were they...
I mean, the issue here also is that it might be anachronistic to even speak about Islam as we recognize that Islam, since Islam back then might have been something very different than it became later during the Abbasid period.
It might have been a more Christianized version of Islam. Like it could have been more closer to the Christian tradition or the Jewish tradition, so to speak.
Maybe, but I mean, the thing is that if you look at, for example, the Aksumite version of Christianity, because I think that one has influenced Islam a lot, as well as I think that traditional Jewish traditions has influenced them as well, since there existed Jewish kingdoms in the southern Arabia.
Yes.
And these things, they were always built in a very specific way, in that, you know, you had the divine law that controlled the rulership and the divine law that ordered society, as I've talked about earlier. They, sure, you do have similar in the Aksumite tradition later with the Tokolud, and which are the, you know, the ones that followed tradition.
Yes.
And those that actually argued that you should actually do have some respect for local tradition. So it's not entirely outside of it. But I do still think that the Umayyads were they tried to evolve in a different path than most others, but they failed due to it. And then the Abbasids replaced them, and they more or less came back to pattern.
Yeah, and I feel like Dan Gibson does have a point about Abbasid propaganda. At least I kind of feel that a lot of demonization of the Umayyads could have been probably due to Abbasid propaganda.
Yeah, it probably was due to Abbasid propaganda, but the issue with the Abbasids is that they tried to centralize after they had taken power. They tried to centralize in a way that even the Umayyads didn't try to, and then it backfired. With the entire thing with the Mihna and the counter protests.
Yes.
And this is, if we are ever going to discuss the Mu'tazila movement and what they were actually stood for, then you have to invite me, because I want to give a long ass rant about how the Mu'tazila weren't some sort of, you know, rationalist, peace-loving, you know, progressive Islam.
Absolutely.
That wasn't what they were at all.
No, you definitely need a huge rant section. We'll give you like a 30-minute rant section for that, just for that. And it should be, I think, if we'll cover Abbasid period, then we're definitely doing the revolts of the Mu'tazilites. Back to Muawiyah. The first, apparently he was a cousin of Usman, and he survived, but did have a minor injury from an assassination attempt. Now, I remember you saying that Muawiyah is more of a tragic figure, but before we get there, let's go over the facts that, you know,
No, I said that Ali was more of a tragic figure.
Oh, Ali being a tragic figure. Okay, yeah. I actually agree with that, though. Ali.
Muawiyah's name is also pretty funny, by the way.
Yeah.
You do know what it means, right?
What does it mean?
Oh, because Muawiyah is the female form of Muawi, which is barking dog.
Oh, wow. So he's actually...
So the barking bitch, in other words.
Wow. I wonder if he actually knew that.
Because this has to do with Arabic traditions, and also that this is the same in Jewish traditions, because several names in Jewish traditions are also very strange. But the thing is, you give a bad name to someone with a very bad attribute, and they think kind of like this is kind of like doing more Murphy's Law, but in reverse.
Oh, man. Like, you've already doomed this kid to death, practically, or doomed this kid to, like, villainy, practically.
No, it's the opposite. By giving them a bad name, they will have good luck.
Oh, wow. That's also weird. But, like, you know, given Muawiyah being also, like, one of the biggest villains of Islamic history, but now in Pakistan, we can't say anything bad against Muawiyah because that's against blasphemy, too. But we're just addressing history. This is what he did. Because he did prefer methods like bribery. He did use the excuse of his cousin Usman's murder in order. It kind of gave him an opportunity. He was also a big opportunist as well, and he was quite shrewd as a politician.
Yes, definitely.
Apparently Hassan was poisoned in 670. Okay, 670. So 662, Muawiyah took over, 661, 662, and then Hassan died in 670. So, he was able to take the throne from Kufa. However, he was supposed to pay a high pension to Kufa. So he didn't like that one bit. Now, he had a 20-year reign from he moved the capital to Damascus. And allegedly, it's the most stable one the Arabs had seen since the death of Omar. And his administrative reforms were just as excellent, such as the use of a police network, a Shuria, personal bodyguards for his safety, divans for local administration, just as Omar had established, among others. Apparently, Muawiyah was also very liked by Christians, allegedly. Though, on the other hand, the Jews liked Ali better, which also makes it very interesting. According to Tom Holland, Shadow of the Sword.
And that's the historian, not Spider-Man.
Yeah, the historian, not Spider-Man. Also, Robert Hoyland too also said that the Jews kind of allied themselves with Ali and the Christians allied themselves with a majority, that is. This is more complicated when you go into the surface. So, the Christians with Muawiyah, and he was very popular with the Christian leaders. Though he initiated the campaigns in parts of modern-day Pakistan and Afghanistan and in the West. So yeah, he did manage to expand all the way to the Atlantic coast of Morocco. So he managed to regain territories lost to the Byzantines or the Romans. But most of his gains were reversed after his death due to internal unrest. And yes, this was due to Yazid's reign. And the problem started with Yazid. And what's interesting is that even though Muawiyah said that Yazid was a successor, he actually warned Yazid not to kill Hussein bin Ali, which was the grandson of Muhammad. He actually told him not to kill him, just capture him, but spare him, because the people of Iraq
make him swear bay'ah to you.
Yeah, just don't. Worst case scenario, just capture him, but don't kill him. But Yazid ended up doing the opposite, and so to speak,
or rather, his local governor posse managed to do the opposite.
The Ibn Ziyad, right?
Yeah,
Ibn Ziyad did the opposite, and this was the governor of Kufa at that time. And as his successor, when the Arabs were not accustomed to the dynastic rule. And this was the first attempt at a dynastic rule. And so it was met with much resentment. And like I said, mostly from Hussein bin Ali, who was the Hassan's younger brother, and Abdullah ibn Zubair, who was the son of a close companion to Muhammad. Abdullah ibn Zubair is also the son of Asma, and as well as the nephew of Aisha. So these are two family members. Hussein and Abdullah bin Zubair were also sitting in the same mosque when they were invited to give allegiance, and both of them refused. So these two men were seen as the biggest threat. Though Muawiyah warned Yazid as Abdullah ibn Zubair being the bigger threat because he's the lion who's going to pounce when his prey is not looking. Whereas Hussein bin Ali is the hero of the Iraqi people. So Hussein, when he marched to Kufa, Iraq, he intended to gather his forces, then attack Damascus. Like, that was the intention. So when he went from Medina and Mecca, he went to Mecca and then went to Kufa. However, Kufa was taken over by Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad to intercept. So the two parties then they met at Karbala, or Kurbabul as the area was known as, because it's called the villages of Babylon. And it's on one of the sides of the Euphrates. And the opposite side is the Babel province, which is the Babylon province. So allegedly they say Hussein's army had 70 combatants, though the number is a bit higher and it's debated, because some say it was 300, some say it was 138 that were named. 72 is like the more popular number because Shia Muslims like that number for some reason. It was seen as a very heroic stand, but it was when Hussein got beheaded and killed, it sparked what we know as the second fitna, or the civil war. And the second fitna was where the empire split into three pieces. you had the one piece going to Abdullah ibn Zubair, one by Mukhtar, and one by the Umayyads. And yes, we were just talking about the Battle of Harra or Hurra, that the Medinians had rebelled.
Moose, I really don't want to be that guy, and it's why I stay quiet for this long, because I'm really learning a lot. But we're at the 1 hour 15 minutes mark.
Okay,
so how much
I think
more time do we have?
Let's end it, Yazid, because the second fitna and forward, we can stop here and we can say the next video being Umayyad. Let's just do the next video as Umayyad period. How about
that? Sure, yeah. So next week we can finish up with the Umayyads and do that video reaction.
Yes, we can do the video reaction and then finish off with the Umayyads. So let me just, so we're going to start with the second fitna, and then we're going to, we'll even discuss some interesting stuff like, their expansion into Spain and France, and also the civil war with the Abbasids. And then we'll, hopefully, if we have time, we're going to do the video reaction. So we're going to go around starting from our most, our guests. Actually, we'll start with you, Nikhil. Nikhil, any final thoughts on what we learned today?
I actually learned quite a bit. So this portion of history is not something I'm well versed on.
Yeah.
So it's great that I got to sit back and actually learn quite a bit. And after this, I'll probably get into more of my wheelhouse when we finish the video reaction and start getting into the India stuff, because I have a lot of. You think my Roman research is good? My Indian research will make you see the fear of God.
So, same time period. I'll give Nathan. Nathan, do you have any final words?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just so excited. Besides myself, because this is. I mean, I've been on the Gin and Tonic show in the past with the British guys, those that had a British accent. This is just a wealth of knowledge, and I want to, make it a point to be on it as much as I can. And as I'm talking to you, I'm actually writing a response to other Islamic sources, which I would like to, in the future, join and have discussions with you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the British guys. We are the British Canadians, or the Canadian guys.
Yeah, they're from our motherland. But yeah, we're the new hosts now. But at any point, if you want to talk, you're always welcome to.
Sure. What happened to the British folks?
So Stocks is running a German channel as well. And I think Rob was also running his own channel. I think they just they wanted be able to have someone also continue this channel as well. And Nick and I, we agreed to take over. So it's like the Canadians agreeing to take over British territory. So
then the American is offering to help too.
Perfect. The American offers to help. Absolutely.
All right.
And Culture Ginny, well-mannered Culture Ginny, I would love to hear your final thoughts.
All right. The Rashiduns were either, depending upon how you see it, 4 or 5 caliphs. The first one was pretty good and continued the legacy of Muhammad and administered it with great skill, succeeding in maintaining the state that Muhammad had gifted him by his departure, and even expanding it and consolidating it. Then, after his death, he got replaced by a neurotic control freak. Yes. That wanted to micromanage everything, got into trouble with other groups within this political entity, and also neglected a lot of things due to his overfixation upon details.
Yes.
And even worse, he also promoted the third guy that would replace him after he got murdered due to his slave not liking his behavior towards him.
Yeah.
So when he got replaced by the third guy, which was Uthman, and Uthman could be considered either the most skilled of the politicians of the Rashidun or the worst one.
Yeah.
Depending upon how you define it, he was very skilled as a politician, but he was extremely corrupt and extremely nepotistic in that he only aided his clansmen pretty much to the detriment of everyone else. And you could say that is being skillful, but you could also say that is being very bad. Anyway, it hurt the polity, but it still managed to expand. But it also left a lot of tensions, together with the tensions from the time of Omar, to the hands of the fourth caliph, Ali, who had the unfortunate job of inheriting this mess. And he failed due to it not being skilled enough to handle it. Which, to be honest, I don't think even a very skilled guy would have been managed to handle.
Yeah, Ali, he seems to be like you said, he was the more tragic of the four caliphs, so to speak, because of such a mess that he inherited that, it was just very difficult to maintain at this point.
So we have the good caliph of the four caliphs. We have the good caliph that continued the legacy. We have the neurotic caliph that messed things up. And then we have the corrupt guy that messed things up even more.
Yeah.
And then we have the tragic guy that inherited the mess of the two previous caliphs.
Yeah. And he actually ended up becoming a tragic hero, practically, because of, when he tried to fix the mess, and also like being of a good reputation that he was one of the most renowned warriors and scribesmen, as well as one of the more respected figures of his time, even during the preceding times, that he becomes the more tragic figure of all.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Thank you so much, Nikhil. Thank you so much, Nathan. And yes, apparently Drastic clarifies that Stop and Rob are South African, not British, operating from UK. And, well, we're, so Britain's not getting in control of this anytime soon.
Oh, and just as Moose, I want to ask, and then as also a regular co-panelist, Culture Jenny, and audience members in general, I think we did 6 episodes in the new year. I want to ask, how's the general direction of the show going in the new year? Because I remember we made the New Year resolution at the beginning of the year to be more journalistic and research based. I want to know if we're doing it properly, we're not delivering enough, or if we're overshooting on it.
Yeah, or let us know any particular things you also want to do, that is. Because again, this is a free platform. You're not Patreon users or anything like that, so have your say. So,
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. I won't be doing Discord because my battery is running low. And apparently, never a British guy has ever hosted, but a lot of British panelists, but no hosts. So even though we run on almost UK time, so what do you call it? And thank you, Dude, for the history. Yeah, the history is practically the fascinating side, and I think we also wanted to do Indian history overlapping with Islamic history as well too, like that.
Yeah.
And we might even also cover Muhammad bin Qasim's campaign too. We might.
Yeah.
All
right. So I'll be in Discord later today.
We'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everyone, and have a.
I'll be in Discord. See you guys. In Discord.
I
see Nikhil in Discord. Thank you guys so much, and I'm gonna go charge my laptop.
And the next time, I'll have to use a different name so people don't track me.
All right, I'll use a different name next time.
All right.
Take care, everyone.